I was already reaching for the exit when I heard it, a quiet, broken sound behind the bathroom door. I didn't know that knocking on that door would change the way I saw her, and the way she'd start looking at me. Broken heart sparkles emotional goal, curiosity mixed with hesitation. A quiet shift from indifference to emotional awareness. Atmosphere, dim lights, background music, isolation in a crowded room. I remember checking the time more than once that night. The work party was in full swing, glasses clinking, bass from the speakers vibrating softly through the floor, the sharp scent of cologne and wine blending in the air. Laughter came in bursts, too loud to be genuine. Conversations overlapped, polite and rehearsed. I stood near the edge of the room with a half-finished drink in my hand, smiling at jokes I barely heard. At 25, I was still the young one at the firm. The one people ruffled on the shoulder. The one whose ideas were praised as promising. I'd learned to nod, to stay agreeable, to wait my turn. But that night, something felt heavier than usual. Across the room, I'd noticed her earlier, poised, composed, magnetic without trying. 42, maybe a little older, but in a way that made her presence feel grounded instead of fading. She wore confidence like a tailored coat, effortless. When she laughed, people leaned in. When she spoke, they listened. I'd always admired that about her. Not loudly. Not obviously. Just quietly. But at some point during the night, she disappeared from the room. I didn't think much of it. These events drained everyone eventually. I was about to leave when I heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the rhythm of the party. It came from down the hallway near the restrooms, soft, uneven. Almost swallowed by the music. At first, I told myself I imagined it. Then it came again. Not laughter. Not a phone call. A shaky inhale. A breath trying not to break. My steps slowed. The hallway lighting was dimmer, the music muffled behind me now. The further I walked, the clearer it became, someone was crying. Trying very hard not to. I hesitated outside the women's restroom door. This isn't my business. I could just leave. Pretend I didn't hear anything. But the sound came again, quieter this time, like someone covering their mouth. Something inside me tightened. I knocked gently. Not loud enough to embarrass. Just enough to announce presence. "Are you okay?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. There was a pause. Long enough that I almost turned around. Then the door opened slightly. And there she was. Her mascara wasn't ruined, she'd clearly tried to fix it, but her eyes were glossy, rimmed in something she didn't want anyone to see. One hand gripped the edge of the sink behind her, knuckles faintly pale. Her shoulders were squared, posture still elegant, but the strength looked forced. For a second, neither of us spoke. The music thumped faintly through the walls behind me. The air between us felt still. "I'm fine," she said softly. But her voice betrayed her. And in that moment, I realized the most confident woman in the room had stepped away so no one would see her fall apart. I should have walked away. Instead, I stayed. Protective instinct and emotional recognition. The beginning of emotional intimacy. Tone, gentle, unhurried, respectful. She tried to close the door gently, still holding on to her composure like it was part of her job description. "I'm fine," she repeated, softer this time, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. I didn't push the door. I didn't step forward. I just stayed where I was, giving her space to retreat if she wanted to. "Okay," I said quietly. "But if you're not?" "I'm here." The hallway light cast a soft glow across her face. Up close, she didn't look fragile, she looked tired. Not physically. Emotionally. Like someone who had been strong for too long without permission to stop. She exhaled slowly and opened the door a little wider. "I didn't expect anyone to notice," she admitted. The music from the party thudded faintly behind us, distant now, almost irrelevant. In this small tiled room, everything felt contained. Intimate in a way neither of us had planned. I stepped just inside the doorway, careful to keep my posture relaxed, my hands visible. I didn't want her to feel cornered. She leaned lightly against the sink, arms folding across her waist, not defensive, just holding herself together. Someone said something stupid, she said with a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. I waited. She studied the counter as she spoke. You know how it is. A joke. Harmless. About how women in their 40s shouldn't try to compete with the younger energy in the room. Her jaw tightened slightly at the last words. I felt something protective rise in me, not anger, exactly. More like disbelief. I'd seen the way people gravitated toward her. The way she carried herself. She didn't compete with anyone. She didn't need to. That's ridiculous, I said gently. She gave a soft shrug. It's normal. It's how people think. Her fingers reached for a tissue, dabbing carefully under her eyes. Even the way she fixed her makeup was precise, controlled. I stepped closer to the counter, but not too close. Close enough to let her know she wasn't alone. You don't look like someone competing, I said. You look like someone they're trying to keep up with. That made her pause. She turned her head slowly, really looking at me for the first time since opening the door. There was no flirtation in her expression. Just surprise. Searching. I held her gaze without trying to impress her. Just honest. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she let out a small breath, almost a laugh, but softer. Warmer. You're very kind, she said. I'm not trying to be, I replied. I just don't think they see what I see. The words hung between us. I reached toward the counter, picking up a fresh napkin and offering it to her. Our fingers brushed as she took it. It was barely a touch, but it lingered half a second longer than necessary. Her hand was warm. Steady. She noticed it too. I saw the flicker in her eyes. Not discomfort, awareness. She lowered her hand slowly, the napkin still between her fingers. Why aren't you out there? She asked, nodding toward the music. I gave a small smile. I was about to leave. And now? I didn't hesitate. Now I'm glad I didn't. The room felt quieter after that. Not because the music stopped, but because something shifted. The space between us didn't feel accidental anymore. It felt chosen. Emotional goal, a shared choice. The first subtle step from strangers in private to something intentionally connected. Tone, calm, reflective, gently intimate. She looked steadier now. Not perfectly composed, but no longer on the edge of breaking. The tightness around her eyes had softened. The bathroom lights, harsh and unflattering, didn't suit her. She deserved something warmer than fluorescent honesty. Do you want some air? I asked. It's loud in there. She hesitated, glancing toward the hallway like she was calculating how quickly she could return to her professional mask. Then she nodded. Yes. Just for a minute. We stepped out together. The hallway felt narrower walking side by side. Not touching, but close enough that I was aware of the quiet rhythm of her breathing. When we reached the exit doors, the music dulled behind us, replaced by the cool hush of night air. Outside, the city felt calmer. Streetlights cast a golden glow across the pavement. A faint breeze moved through her hair, lifting a few strands loose from their careful arrangement. She inhaled deeply, like she'd been underwater all evening. That's better, she murmured. Her voice sounded different out here. Less guarded. We stood near the building entrance, the glass doors reflecting us back, two figures slightly angled toward each other. I hate that it still gets to me, she admitted quietly. You'd think by now I'd be immune. To what? I asked. To being measured. Compared. Replaced. The word lingered between us. I leaned against the railing beside her, close enough that our shoulders almost aligned. I get that feeling, I said. She glanced at me, curious. Different reasons, I added. I'm always the youngest in the room. I get the "you'll understand when you're older" speech a lot. That earned a soft laugh from her, genuine this time. I've probably said that before, she admitted. Maybe, I smiled. But you don't treat me like I'm temporary. That made her quiet. The wind picked up slightly, and she shivered, subtle, but noticeable. Without thinking too hard about it, I slipped off my jacket. You'll freeze, she said automatically. I'll survive. I stepped closer and draped it gently over her shoulders. My fingers brushed the back of her neck as I adjusted the collar. Her skin was warm despite the chill. She didn't move away. Instead, she tilted her chin slightly, allowing the fabric to settle around her. The jacket looked oversized on her, but somehow right. Thank you, she said, her voice softer now. We stood closer than before. Not touching. But the distance between us felt intentional, fragile. Her hand rested lightly against the railing. Mine mirrored it, only inches away. I could see the faint rise and fall of her chest under the borrowed jacket. I wondered if she could hear how steady I was trying to keep my breathing. You know, she said after a moment, I didn't expect you to be the one knocking on that door. I didn't expect to, I admitted. She turned toward me fully then, studying my face like she was seeing something new. Not a colleague. Not the youngest guy in the office. Just me. The noise from inside swelled briefly as someone opened the door behind us, then faded again. Out here, it felt like we'd stepped outside more than just the building. We'd stepped outside the roles we usually played. And neither of us seemed eager to go back in. Emotional goal, awareness and hesitation. Attraction deepens, but reality quietly steps in. Tone, intimate, reflective, restrained. We didn't rush back inside. Instead, we drifted toward a bench just beyond the entrance, half hidden by a row of neatly trimmed hedges. The city hummed around us, distant traffic, the occasional echo of laughter from the building, but it felt far away now. She sat first, smoothing her dress unconsciously, reclaiming some of her composure. I sat beside her, leaving just enough space to be respectful. Just enough to be careful. For a moment, we watched the streetlights flicker softly against the pavement. Then she asked it. How old are you? Her tone wasn't suspicious. Just curious, measured. 25, I answered. She nodded slowly. Not surprised. Just confirming something she'd already sensed. I'm 42, she said. I didn't react dramatically. I'd known she was older. I'd always known. But hearing the number spoken aloud changed something. It made the space between us tangible. That bothers you? I asked gently. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she folded her hands in her lap, fingers intertwined like she was holding a quiet debate with herself. It doesn't, she said finally. That's the problem. The honesty in that sentence settled heavily between us. She turned slightly toward me, her knee angling closer to mine. Not touching, but nearly. Close enough that I felt the warmth radiating from her. People would talk, she continued. They'd assume things. About you. About me. They already assume things, I said quietly. She looked at me, one brow lifting slightly. They assume I'm inexperienced, I added. That I need guidance. That I don't know what I want. And do you? She asked softly. The question wasn't teasing. It was careful. I met her gaze without flinching. I know how I feel right now. Her breath caught almost imperceptibly. The air shifted. Our shoulders brushed, just barely, as she adjusted her posture. Neither of us moved away. That small point of contact felt louder than the music inside. She looked down at where our arms nearly touched, then back up at me. There was no flirtation in her expression. Just awareness. Calculation. Vulnerability. I've worked very hard to be taken seriously, she said. To not be reduced to how I look, or how old I am. You're not, I replied. At least not by me. The sincerity in my voice made her eyes soften. A strand of hair fell across her cheek, and without thinking too much about it, I reached up slowly, giving her time to stop me if she wanted to, and brushed it back. My fingers barely grazed her temple. Her skin was warm. Smooth. Real. She didn't pull away. Instead, her eyes fluttered closed for half a second, like she was allowing herself to feel something she usually denied. When she opened them again, there was conflict there. But not regret. "This is complicated," she whispered. I nodded. Yeah. But neither of us moved. Our knees touched this time, lightly, intentionally accidental. And instead of breaking the contact, we let it stay. Emotional goal, emotional risk. They stop pretending this is casual and admit the truth, gently, honestly. Tone, vulnerable, quiet, deeply intimate. The city felt quieter somehow, like it was giving us space to decide something neither of us had planned. Our knees were still touching. Not pressing. Just resting there, a subtle acknowledgement that neither of us had pulled away. She looked down at the contact before slowly lifting her eyes back to mine. There was no panic in her expression now. Just awareness, and something softer. "I should go back inside," she said, though she didn't move. "Do you want to?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she exhaled slowly, her shoulders dropping, the last bit of professional armor slipping away. "I haven't noticed in a long time," she admitted. "Not like this." Her voice was steady, but quieter than before. I felt my chest tighten. "Noticed how?" I asked gently. She hesitated, searching for words she probably hadn't said out loud in years. "Not for what I can do," she said. "Or how I perform. Or how I hold everything together." Her fingers absently traced the edge of the bench between us. "Just, as a woman." The vulnerability in that sentence landed deeply. "You are," I said, my voice low but certain. "You've been that all night." Her gaze held mine longer this time. Not evaluating. Not guarded. Just open. "And you?" she asked softly. "Why are you still out here?" I swallowed, suddenly aware that honesty was a two-way street. "Because I don't feel small when I'm sitting next to you," I admitted. "I don't feel like the youngest guy in the room. I feel steady." The word hung there. She shifted slightly closer, enough that the side of her thigh brushed mine fully now. Warmth spread through the thin fabric between us. Her hand rested on the bench, palm down, only inches from mine. The silence stretched, but it wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken questions. Carefully, slowly, I let my fingers move across the wood until they barely touched hers. I paused, giving her space to pull away. She didn't. Instead, her fingers turned slightly, just enough for our hands to align. Then she intertwined them with mine. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't reckless. It felt intentional. Her hand was warm and firm, her grip steady despite the emotion in her eyes. I could feel the faint pulse in her wrist. "This is dangerous," she murmured. "Why?" I asked quietly. "Because I don't want this to be a moment you look back on and regret." "I won't," I said immediately. Not defensive. Just sure. Her thumb brushed lightly against the back of my hand, absent-minded, testing. "You don't know that," she whispered. "I know that I'm not confused," I replied. That made her breath catch slightly. The music from inside swelled faintly again as someone opened the door, but neither of us turned. Her eyes moved to my lips for half a second, then back to my eyes. Not accidental. Intentional. "I forgot what this feels like," she said softly. "The anticipation." Her hand tightened slightly around mine. And in that quiet, electric stillness, we both stopped pretending this was harmless. It wasn't. And neither of us wanted it to be. Emotional goal, peak romantic tension. They confront the line between desire and consequence. Tone, slow, intimate, restrained, heavy with feeling but YouTube safe. We both felt it. The shift. Her hand was still in mine, warm and steady, but her breathing had changed, softer, slightly uneven. Mine probably had too. The party doors opened briefly behind us, a burst of laughter spilling out before fading again. Reality lingered just a few feet away. But out here, it felt like time had narrowed to this bench, this night, this quiet space between us. She stood first. Not abruptly. Slowly. I rose with her, our hands separating only because they had to. The absence of her touch felt immediate, noticeable. We were standing closer now than we had been sitting. Close enough that I could see the faint shimmer in her eyes under the street light. Close enough to notice the small rise and fall of her chest beneath my jacket still draped over her shoulders. "You're not nervous?" she asked softly. "I am," I admitted. That seemed to surprise her. "You hide it well. I don't want you to think this is impulsive." She studied my face carefully. The breeze lifted her hair again, brushing it gently across her cheek. This time she didn't move to fix it. Without overthinking, I reached up once more, slower than before, and tucked the strand behind her ear. My fingertips grazed her temple, then traced lightly down to her jaw. The contact was brief. Intentional. Her eyes fluttered closed for a second. When they opened again, there was no confusion left in them. Just choice. Her hand lifted, tentative at first, and rested flat against my chest. I felt it immediately. The warmth of her palm. The faint pressure. The steady rhythm of my heartbeat beneath her touch. Her fingers spread slightly, like she was grounding herself. "This is the part where we decide," she whispered. The air felt thinner. I moved closer, not pressing, not trapping, just reducing the distance until there was barely any left. Her perfume mixed with the cool night air. I could see the tiny detail of her lashes, the faint tremble in her lower lip she was trying to control. My hand hovered at her waist, not touching yet. Waiting. She didn't step back. Instead, she leaned in the smallest fraction. Our foreheads nearly touched. Her breath brushed my cheek. Warm. Unsteady. My hand finally settled at her waist, light, respectful, fingers resting gently against the fabric of her dress. She inhaled sharply. Our faces tilted instinctively, slowly, cautiously. There was no rush. No urgency. Just the awareness that once we crossed that line, everything would feel different. Her gaze dropped to my lips again. Then back up. And in that suspended second, right before contact, something softened in her expression. Instead of closing the distance fully, she turned her head slightly and pressed a slow, lingering kiss to my cheek. Not quick. Not distant. Intentional. Her lips stayed there for a moment longer than polite. When she pulled back, her hand was still on my chest. "That's as far as I can go tonight," she said gently. Not rejection. Restraint. I nodded, my hand still resting lightly at her waist. "I'm not going anywhere," I replied. She searched my face, making sure. And for the first time that evening, the tension between us wasn't about whether we wanted each other. It was about whether we were brave enough to let this become real. Ending type, together but uncertain emotional goal, mature choice. They acknowledge the risk, but choose honesty and intention over secrecy. Tone, grounded, hopeful, emotionally complete. Her lips had barely left my cheek, but the warmth lingered. Not just on my skin, deeper than that. She stepped back slowly, though her hand remained on my chest for a second longer, like she wasn't quite ready to break contact completely. When she finally lowered it, the night air felt cooler. "We can't pretend this is simple," she said quietly. The honesty in her voice didn't sound fearful anymore. It sounded steady. "I'm not looking for simple," I replied. She studied me carefully, searching for doubt, for hesitation. Maybe even for immaturity. I let her look. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I don't want to be someone's secret, she continued. Or someone's phase. You wouldn't be, I said. And I wouldn't treat you like one. The words came easily because they were true. She folded her arms loosely, not defensively, just thinking. The jacket I'd given her slipped slightly off one shoulder. I reached out instinctively to adjust it again, my fingers brushing her collarbone lightly as I pulled the fabric back into place. The touch was soft. Familiar already. She didn't comment on it, but her breathing shifted again. You realize what this would look like, she said. At work. To everyone. I know, I answered. But I also know that what happened tonight wasn't about rebellion. Or proving something. It was about connection. That word seemed to settle into her. We stood facing each other in the quiet glow of the street light. No more hiding in shadows. No more pretending it was accidental. She stepped closer, not urgently, just naturally, until there was barely space between us again. I don't want to rush this, she said. If we do this, we do it intentionally. Slow, I agreed. A faint smile touched her lips. Very slow. Inside the building, the music was still playing. People were still laughing. The world hadn't changed. But something between us had. She reached for my hand this time. Not tentative. Certain. Our fingers laced together like they had earlier, but now it felt less like discovery and more like agreement. We don't hide, she said firmly. If this becomes something, it's because we both choose it. Not because we got caught up in a moment. I'm choosing it, I said. Her eyes softened at that. We walked back toward the entrance together, hands still connected. Not tightly, just enough to feel each other there. Before stepping inside, she paused. Turning to face me fully one last time in the quiet. Her free hand lifted to my face, fingertips brushing lightly along my jaw. Not possessive. Not rushed. Affectionate. You surprised me tonight, she admitted. You surprised me too. She leaned in again, this time not for a kiss, but resting her forehead briefly against mine. It was intimate in a quieter way. Grounded. When she pulled back, her expression was calm. Not overwhelmed. Not conflicted. Hopeful. We'll see where this goes, she said softly. Not a promise. Not a goodbye. A beginning. And for the first time that night, I wasn't thinking about the exit anymore. I was thinking about what it would feel like to walk forward, beside her.